Hey. For some reason, as I was chanting and kind of sensing everyone out there, I was thinking of the 3 people that left a couple days ago. So just sending them our love. We have lots of coming and going, and yet we're always here. I wonder the Mahasangha that joins us, and thank you for joining us, kind of sees people come and go, and who was that? And oh, there's a new person, and where's Shoryu? It's really lovely. You know, we feel isolated sometimes, and it's so true that all beings are with us also. But then there are also many people who are joining us from all over the place. So Kozan was going to speak tonight, and he's not feeling quite well enough. I'm like the substitute teacher, which is scary since I was a high school teacher and I know what that is, but it's good. I'm glad to be here again. And I'm going to talk about work. And what I invite everyone joining us to do is really take a minute and think about your work, what you consider your work. And I know there are teachers and nurses joining us, and many people I don't know. And think about this thing for you that you call work, that you show up to in a number of ways. Just kind of bringing that into your heart so that what we talk about tonight is about your life, not a Dharma combat, but about your life and actually what the Dharma has to teach us about this thing we call work. So the name of my talk, the title of my talk is Zen, Love, and Work. I was thinking about that because I had love in my last title of my talk. So I thought, I should just always, because that's what we're doing here, actually. But I want to start by talking about our conditioned views of work. Because they're, for the most part, harmful, I think. And one of the ways that we're conditioned to think about work is kind of company time, right? And my time. And I realized along the way somehow that I was always categorizing, I was always making those divisions, saying, okay, but now, today, this is my time. So what does that do to all this 40 and 60 and 80 days, and hours that I think are not my time? I was a high school teacher, so you got 80 hours a week right there, and raising 5 kids. And somehow, even in the delight of all of it, I still had these categories, and I still felt like my time was this little piece of, an hour here and there. And it's just so harmful and limiting when we carry that view. And it kind of cuts us off from the chance to experience and enjoy the activity as we're in it, because it's not my time. So, what mind do we actually bring to any activity that we do. And how do we decide if it's work, right? So maybe there's housework and gardening in your life. And maybe the housework is not your time, but the gardening is. I love to wash dishes, for example. I get to do it sometimes, but Chuck does it mostly because he's mostly home. But all these activities, computer work, your job, and the parts of your job that make that up, and how many of them are delightful, but we put them in the camp of our job and we bring a certain mindset to them. So that's one of the ways we're conditioned to hold work. Another is that it's transactional. I give this, I get that. I give this, I get that. And that's true for paid work, but we also bring that into other things like, well, I'm going to give you an hour of my time listening, but then of course I have an expectation that you'll pay me back. And just another frame, another weight actually that we put on work. So here's another one that actually is one that I feel a lot of pain about, and I feel that there's a lot of pain in the world about, and that's how we rank the value of work, both in how we pay people, how we regard them in our society, what we think is valuable and not valuable. The people whose hard labor feed us, take away our garbage, I could spend the whole hour listing this and that. But it's a great devaluing of who we are and how we engage in the world. And I was on a collective farm for 35 years or so. Chuck and I lived on this collective farm, and of course it had problems. More as the years went on, we were a little bit more starry-eyed. But one of the things that I love and still really admire about the way we worked together was everyone's work was valued the same. And we had this structure of collective hours, and it didn't matter if you were the farm manager, if you were driving the tractor, or if you were like me, the unskilled one, hoeing a row, or out harvesting, or going to the farmer's market to sell the produce. It was just our labor. And I think it's a beautiful way to hold our work and our contributions. But for the most part, no, we don't do that. So I'm still on the list of problems. Here's the next one. This thing we call work ethic, which could be seen in a pure way, but I think mostly it's not held in such a healthy way. The definition is, it's the principle that hard work is intrinsically virtuous and worthy of reward. But I think in the way we hold work ethic, there's a lot of what we think we should do, and a lot of right and wrong, and a lot of comparison also that we bring forward in who's working harder than who, and who has a better work ethic. And it's also reward oriented, also ego driven. I was a school administrator for a while. It's a very challenging job, especially the one I had, but the culture there was one-upsmanship. I worked 80 hours this week. I worked 100. I mean, literally, not even subtly, that was the conversation. You know, this virtuous work ethic, very, very unhealthy and very goal-oriented. And much of the way we approach work is goal-oriented. And so rather than engaging, we're getting something done or we're focused on some kind of a result. And I also want to mention boundaries, and I'll bring this up a little bit later on, but I think this necessity to have boundaries around work is mostly because of everything else I just said. It's mostly because we're not in the natural flow of this is one body and we're giving and taking and we're showing up to what's there for us to be done. And there's joy and there's energy there. Boundaries are necessary in our work life, mostly because of all these other conditioned ways, I think, that we approach it. So, Dinan last week talked about learning to unlearn. And everything that I've talked about so far is what I think we need to work on unlearning. And it's subtle, you know, sometimes we don't even see that we're bringing this energy into how we engage with what we call work. So I'll talk about some of the Zen teachings about work. Zen teachings point to the fact that work that's goal-oriented is actually squandering our life with an eye on the goal, but not being present in the moment to what we're engaged with. Zen teaches us to learn to work without attachments to outcome so that we're alive in our activity. Our energy is right there in the activity. Zen teaches us that work is a natural expression of our interconnectedness. And we have the practice of Samu, which is our work practice where we're just getting up from the cushion and endeavoring to work with the mind of Zazen, with a one-pointed attention on what's in front of us. And then kind of underlying and supporting all this is the teaching that we approach the activity of our life as undivided activity, so that we're simultaneously including actually the relative and the absolute. And I'll talk about that some more, but we're including this kind of non-dual open awareness as well as our discriminating awareness as we engage with our work. So let's start with the instructions to the cook. And a lot of what I'm going to say is from that beautiful essay, Dogen's beautiful essay, and from How to Cook Your Life, which is Uchiyama Roshi's commentary on the Tenzo Kyokun, or instructions to the cook. There's just so much love in this essay. And the entire essay is about Zen and love and work. And its basic teaching is that work is the natural expression of who you really are. And the fundamental spirit of the essay is that you and the totality of the world you live in constitute the life of the self. Not you over here and work over there, not you over here and the world you live in over there, but you and the totality of the world you live in is your true self, and that your activity reflects that spirit. And I want to bring in a quote from a few weeks ago in a talk I gave about diligence, expressing love. And the quote was this: "Sometimes in the night, a dying friend asks, 'Will you sit with me?' The light is flickering, our heart feels broken, and we recognize that the whole universe asks when he asks. The totality of the world you live in, constituting the life of the self." And when we engage and when we respond, we're answering what the whole universe is asking of us in that moment. So the life of the true self doesn't exist apart from our functioning and from our working. So we have to take care of that world. As Dogen says in one point in that essay, we have to treat ingredients as if they were our own eyeballs. So Dogen expresses this understanding of life and work and practice in his essay through the examination of the role of the Tenzo, or the monastery cook. So in the Tenzo Kyokun, he tells two stories, my book's right here, of two encounters with Zen monastery cooks. So I'll read the first one. When I was at Mount Tiantong, a monk called Lu was serving as Tenzo. One day after the noon meal, I was walking to another building within the complex when I noticed Lu drying mushrooms in the sun. He carried a bamboo stick, but had no hat on his head. The sun's rays beat down so harshly that the tiles along the walk burned one's feet. Lu worked hard and was covered with sweat. I couldn't help but feel the work was too much of a strain on him. His back was a bow drawn taut, and his long eyebrows were crane white. I approached and asked his age. He replied that he was 68 years old. Then I went on to ask him why he never used any assistance. He answered, "Other people are not me." "You're right," I said. "I can see that your work is the activity of the Buddha Dharma. But why are you working so hard in this scorching sun?" He replied, "If I don't do it now, when else can I do it?" There was nothing else for me to say. As I walked along that passageway, I began to sense inwardly the true significance of the role of Tenzo. So when the 13th century Zen master, Dogen, asked the Zen cook why he didn't have his assistants do the work of drying mushrooms, the cook said, "I'm not other people. Other people aren't me." And in the same way, we have to realize this life, this is the life we have. This is the only life we have. It's ours right now. The responsibility for it is ours. And if we don't do it ourselves, we're actually throwing our life away. So we take up our responsibility. Other people are not me. If I don't do it now, when shall I do it? In his commentary, Uchiyama Roshi says, "This is my life. This is an undeniable truth. There are no real alternatives than to live it, be it, throw all of ourselves into it, to live this koan, this moment, rather than wish for another." So if you think back to your work in any given moment that you show up to, maybe there's a for and against and a fear and a resistance. My work, for example, may be to deliver a message to someone I'd rather not give them, to sit down and respond to the next email, to scrub the pot the rice was burned in, and to bring my whole life force in. That's it. If you wondered what Zen is, that's Zen. Yeah. So because we throw our life force into our work, each individual situation comes to life and we can respond freshly. When the situation is full of life, we become more alive as a result. And this means then, says Uchiyama, our life force has breathed a vividness into the situation. Our wholehearted present has brought the situation to life. So usually we go for the opposite. And we think that there are situations that bring us to life. And then we have to run around looking for those situations and avoiding the situations that we think aren't the enlivening ones. So we look for the perfect vacation or the perfect job or the perfect relationship. But what if the opposite is true? What if we bring life to the situation that's here? Uchiyama Roshi says, the way I experience the meaning and value of my life is by throwing all my passion for living into everything I do. When all that we encounter is the Buddha Dharma, viewed with big mind, the meaning of living day to day changes completely, as does the value we normally place on things. And everything's equally important. So here's to the second encounter that Dogen had with the Tenzo. After recounting his encounter at Mount Tiantong, Dogen continues by describing an encounter with the Tenzo from, I don't know how to pronounce this, just saying, Aiwang. Dogen was on board a ship, and some of us have heard this story. It's when he first came to China and he had to, I don't know if it was a quarantine, but he had to stay on the ship. And an old monk comes on board to buy mushrooms. And they have a brief encounter, and Dogen asks him to stay and visit. But the monk says he's leaving right away. He walked 14 miles to come and buy these mushrooms, and he has another 14 miles to walk back to the monastery. And so Dogen says, but surely in such a large monastery, there must be others who can prepare the meal. I've been put in charge of this work. How can I entrust it to others? Then Dogen says, while you're so old, do you do the hard work of a Tenzo? Why not study or contemplate koans or sit zazen? Is there something special to be gained by working particularly as a Tenzo? The old monk burst out laughing and said, my good friend from abroad, you do not understand what practice is and what it's all about, nor do you understand the meaning of characters. So Dogen says, what are characters and what is practice? And the monk says, if you don't deceive yourself about this problem, you will be a man of the way. And then he goes back his 14 miles with his mushrooms and leaves Dogen to ponder. But he also says before he leaves, maybe we'll have a chance to talk this over again. So there's a later encounter, and Dogen asks again, what are characters? And the monk says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which is a way of saying the 10,000 things, all phenomena are characters. And then Dogen asks again, what is practice? And the monk answers, there's nothing in the world that is hidden. Everything in our lives is practice, immediate and intimate. In the Tenzo Kyokun, Dogen tells us this: handle even a single leaf of a green in such a way that it manifests the body of the Buddha. This in turn allows the Buddha to manifest through the leaf. This is a power which you cannot grasp with your rational mind. It operates freely according to the situation in a most natural way. At the same time, this power functions in our lives to clarify and settle activities and is beneficial to all living things. So you can see all these teachings over and over again, pointing to the same thing. In our engagement, we discriminate, but we stay grounded in the understanding that everything is our life. Everything is Buddha Dharma, and we act from that view. Every encounter, every interaction constitutes our life. Every encounter. Are you here? Are you awake? I did a session, I don't know where the session was, maybe Green Gulch. And there was this fierce Zen, wonderful Zen teacher. I also don't remember which one it was. In the middle, like it'd be like 11 at night. Are you awake? Are you here? It was great. I am now. So I want to take another look at work through another story. And these are all kind of pointing to why engage in work, what it's all about. And this is a story about Baizhang, and there's a very well-known saying of Baizhang's, a Chinese ancestor from the 1700s. A day without work is a day without food. So he was known for this, and he made a point never to miss Tamu at his temple, even when he was 90 years old. And his students were so concerned about him that they hid his tools. Like, this is ridiculous, you know, you're too old. There's a lot of too old here, so I don't know about that, but and so he stopped eating, and they had to give him his tools back. So, you know, a day without work is a day without food. And is this, you know, it can sound like hardcore Zen, right? You know, sit up straight, don't move, hardcore Zen. But I think there's something else actually truly here than you know, the kind of work ethic, which is the expression of the truth of interdependence. A day without work is a day without food. We tend the fields, food grows, we eat, we engage. And it's hard for us to get that. Our lives are disconnected in the modern world, you know, in most of the settings that we live, and fragmented. And work is transactional rather than this natural expression of one body, you know, natural cycling through of our energy, what we give and what we receive. In Bernie's instructions to the cook, which is also somewhat based on the Tenzo Kyokun, he says, the spiritual aspect of right livelihood is that it helps us attain a transformation of consciousness from an ego-centered attachment to a recognition of interdependence with each other and with the earth. The ingredients we use in our lives and our livelihood consists of all the elements we're made of: earth, water, fire, air, and space. These elements are all interconnected, and each has an effect on the others. When we see this, we realize that whatever we do, no matter how seemingly inconsequential, also has an effect on the environment, our children, our grandchildren, and future generations. So this is why we say in our vows that using all the ingredients of our lives is not disparaging the three treasures. And it's an expression of our interdependence. And this is something that we have the gift of experiencing living in community. It's right here with us all the time. So what are the ways that we unlearn this attitude toward work? And one of them is work practice. This attentiveness that we bring in Samu, which is a direct expression of our lives, doing what's in front of us. We don't even have to make many decisions about what that is. It's presented us, to us as the next thing that needs attention. And so we move through these events of our daily lives in a flow, and then we adapt and we enact what's next. And the invitation is to be present to that. So in our sitting meditation, we practice concentration on our breath in Samu. We concentrate on our work. We're washing the dishes, we just wash the dishes, or at least that's the invitation. And it's also not goal-oriented. We're invited to engage in the task, and when it's time to stop, to stop. And when we work in this way, instead of wearing us out and making us tired, if we bring forward this mind, our work can actually give us energy and peace of mind. So another story that's about kind of how we practice with this is one I love. I have to always have a woman's story in there if I've got one of the ancestors. And this is the old woman's miraculous powers. It's in the Hidden Lamp and other collections, I'm sure, also from the 8th century China. Magu, Nangquan, and another monk were on pilgrimage. There's always these kind of doofusy monks passing by these old women. It's so great. So Magu, Nangquan, and another monk were on pilgrimage. Along the way, they met a woman who had a tea shop. The woman prepared a pot of tea and brought 3 cups. She said to them, "O monks, let those of you with miraculous powers drink tea." I'm going to take a drink of water, and that way the suspense will build in my story. And I'm also thirsty. So she said, "O monks, let those of you with miraculous powers drink tea." The 3 looked at each other, and the woman said, "Watch this decrepit old woman show you her miraculous powers." And then she picked up the cups, poured the tea, and went out. We're always looking for something special. That thing in the cushion that's going to blow our minds. That special experience, that something out there. We lean into the future. And the entire universe is present in the act of pouring tea. This old lady serving tea isn't taking it as important or not important, high or low, just pouring tea. And she's presenting the teaching that everything is sacred. Everything is miraculous, just by doing what's in front of her. There's this wonderful quote by Dogen where he talks about this. He says, "Those who regard secular life as an obstacle to the sacred only know that there's no sacred in secular activities. They do not yet know that no secular activities exist in the sacred. The sacred act of pouring tea, no secular activities exist when we're manifesting the sacred. Manifesting the Buddha Dharma in everything we do. The mundane is sacred. So, can we see it?
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
Cool. What should we ask? So, talk about miraculous. Oh my gosh, that was so good. Let me see. Oh, my last two talks were kind of short, so I really put a lot in this one, but I might have to skip over something. Yeah, I guess I will. I'll recommend this book though. So I practiced with Darlene Cohen at Green Gulch. She was a San Francisco Zen Center marvelous teacher who passed away maybe a decade ago, maybe less. And she wrote this book called The One Who Is Not Busy, somewhat based on this wonderful koan about the one who is not busy, and how the one who is not busy and the one who are sweeping are not one, not two. And in this book, which has a subtitle, The One Who Is Not Busy, Connecting with Work in a Deeply Satisfying Way. And she talks about bringing this non-discriminating, open, non-dual mind and the dual mind that makes decisions, how they arise together. And that in working in this way and actually practicing in this way, we can have a completely different experience of work. She calls it, one of the images she gives that I love is, so stepping into our work day is like dipping our hands into a river of activity and being present to our immediate experience, our values, our discriminating mind. And then we take our hands out of this river of activity, this flow of activity. And that we have, again, cultivating this ability to just completely throw ourselves into activity, no matter what it is, without judging, with our whole heart, and without kind of weighing results or the likelihood of particular results. She says we have a hungry ghost mentality of always looking ahead, kind of what the tea lady is pointing, for the special thing. But this isn't where our happiness can be found. So just kind of rolling back and giving a little bit of review of what we've looked at. We talked about unlearning this goal-oriented, dualistic, transactional, ego-driven attitude towards work, which is how we're taught. And we talked about what unlearning might look like and why it's important, so that we can bring this energy and ease and joy to what we call work. So now, importantly, as we practice with these aspects of work, it remains important to look at all our activities from the basic perspective of our values. Are we in alignment as we engage in whatever we're engaging in? Are we in alignment with our values, with our vows? Not causing harm, serving life, alleviating suffering. Because without this alignment, especially those working out in the world, we experience moral distress, we experience burnout. So we need to ask the question, what should we be doing with our lives? And I want to reference Roshi's short recording from the recent newsletter. What would a bodhisattva do? What should we be doing with our lives? What would a bodhisattva do? And she says, not turn away from suffering. Show up for suffering beings with conviction, courage. This is quoting Roshi, with conviction, courage, balance, love, and with each other. Whether we're working in the Upaya garden, showing up at the cancer center to be with the next patient who's gotten really bad news, cooking for the unsheltered, cleaning our room, listening to a friend, showing up with conviction, courage, balance, love, and with each other. So there's this trap that I fall into, and I think some others of you might, of looking at these heroes and heroines and their huge, courageous acts. And they were standing in their truth and turning towards suffering, but also they were simply doing the next thing. There's this beautiful essay that Charlotte Joko Beck writes, and she's talking about Mother Teresa. And she's writing about Mother Teresa saying to God, "Thy will be done." And yet, Joko Beck comments, yes, thy will be done. And yet, she was just doing the next thing, showing up. And Joko Beck says, if we're honest, we can see that mostly we live for my will be done. I mean, we do. Even with our robes and rakusus and vows, it's hard. And we need to see this in ourselves. So Mother Teresa's saying to God, thy will be done. Well, maybe for us, it's not God's will, but maybe what Dogen calls total dynamic functioning, the totality that we're showing up for, not me, but this total dynamic functioning that includes, Joko Beck says, the growing of a fingernail, the cleaning done by the liver, the explosion of a star, kind of the master, the all of it. And Joko Beck continues, in watching Mother Teresa, where there's no I want, there's joy. When we're clear as to who is the master, our work flows easily. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, okay. I have to leave one other thing out. I was going to share what we read in the kitchen this morning, which was from this book that I've been talking about, which is read in the Upaya kitchen, little paragraph by little paragraph. And it's a story that sounds so puzzling about the cook stirring the rice and, is it Manjushri? Who was there? Appearing on top of the pot, and the cook swats Manjushri away with a spoon and says, even if it were Shakyamuni himself appearing before the pot, I would do the same thing. I would cook the rice. Back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, practices right here. Not the image of Manjushri floating above the pot. So I'm going to end with this gata that's also from Dogen's Tenzo Kyokun. 1, 7, 3, 5. The truth you search for cannot be grasped. As night advances, a bright moon illuminates the whole ocean. The dragon's jewels are found in every wave. Looking for the moon? It is here, in this wave, in the next. So thank you. And we'll end with the 4 Bodhisattva vows.